This time around, it's the turn of learning how to keep your stuff safe with Microsoft Information Protection. As always, what does it do? How does it work? And more importantly, what can it do for you? Let's find out. Greetings YouTubers, welcome back to the channel. Andy here. I so appreciate you stopping by. This time around it's the turn of learning how to keep your stuff safe with Microsoft Information Protection. What started out years ago as rights management services and file classification services has come a long way. But how does it work and what does it do? Well, I've got a demo for you. Now this week I've also been revamping my videos and playlists into I think more understandable order, if you will, rather than having 30 videos in each playlist, there's 5 to 10 videos in each playlist. So if you're really interested in things like Teams, SharePoint, Endpoint Manager, security, there are now dedicated playlists for them. So go ahead and check those out. Now, as always, I love your comments, questions, feedback. I'm really trying to build this sense of community here. So please go ahead and drop any comments in. And I would really appreciate a big thumbs up and hit the like button. And feel free to share the video, by the way. So anyway, without further ado, I think it's time for a demo, don't you? Let's take a look. So in this demo, we're going to take a look at information protection in Microsoft 365. Please note that this used to be known as Azure Information Protection, and it's actually comprised of two products. It's made of something called rights management and file classification services. So to have a look at this, I've come into the Compliance Center in 365. I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to come into Information Protection. Now, Information Protection is designed to allow users to apply labels to what they feel is sensitive data or data that shouldn't essentially go outside the company. All right, and these can either be done either automatically or manually. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a label. And this label, I'm going to say internal use. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this, and I will just, because these fields need to have something in them. So I will just pop that in there and in there as well. Okay. I'm going to click next. Now, we basically have three options here defining the scope for the label. Is this for files and emails, groups and sites? And also currently in preview is the new Azure Purview, so database labels and things like that. Now, can I just mention, first of all, groups and sites by default is disabled. And normally there is a little bit here that says learn more, and you just need to run about 4 or 5 different PowerShell commands. But it's very simple to set up if you just follow the instructions in the link here. The link is gone for me because you can see I've already switched it on. Okay, now files and labels, so we can go through. Let's click on next. Okay, so what do we want to do? What kind of protection do we want to provide? Do we want to encrypt files and emails, or do we want to mark the content of files? I'm going to go actually for both, and I'll click next, and it says okay. So with this it says, okay, do you want to assign some permissions or let the users decide? Well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to let the users decide. In Outlook, do I want to enforce do not forward or encrypt only? Again, for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to choose encrypt only. Again, I can do the same thing in Word, and this is going to ask users basically saying, hey, look, if you create a document here, you're going to need to assign a permission to that. We also, if your system supports this, you can use double key encryption as well. Again, I'm not going to bother. I'm just going to click next here. Okay, so next, do you want to add some content marking? So we have three options. You can add a watermark in your document. So for example, if you're in a film studio, you might put a watermark through the document here. You can have a header at the top of the page or a footer at the bottom of the page. So I'm going to click on header and I'm going to click on customize text. I'll just click in and I'll just say for internal use, use only. Okay, just spell check that. And there we go. You can change the font size. So I'll choose size 12. And again, I can change the color. I'll choose red and I'll choose to center it in the left. Now, the other two fields are exactly the same. So do you want the watermark either across the page or a header or a footer or both? I'm going to go ahead and click on next. Okay, now we have the option, do you want to do manual labeling or do you want to do automated labeling? You know, let's have a go at the automated labeling. And what you can do here is, well, first of all, if this is off, it's very much the user who will then say, look, I think this is a sensitive document. I am going to label it accordingly. If you use auto labeling, and this is a premium feature, you can now add in a condition. And that condition, you can say, okay, if this content contains, and I can say, okay, what does it contain? I can say, does it contain sensitive information? Or we have something called trainable classifiers. So things like behavioral, so threats, inappropriate content, pictures, and so on. I'm going to choose sensitive information types. And this is where we can choose what type of sensitive information it's going to be. And basically, there is pretty much most countries in the world here. Again, what I will do, I'm in the UK, so I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, we have, it's called National Insurance Number. So this is the same as the US Social Security number, for example. You could say your health care number. You might say your driver's license, your electoral roll, a credit card number, anything like that. And what this does, it looks for patterns, all right? So, and basically, if you type in something in an email or in a document that looks like a driver's license number, that looks like a credit card number, it will pop up and it will say, you know, hang on a minute, you're not supposed to send that outside the organization. So those are the options that I'm going to choose. I'm going to click on add. All right. Now, I'm going to scroll down. You can say, you know, you can control what kind of sensitivity. In this, I'm just going to accept the defaults and click next. Okay, now we come to the group settings. And again, if your group settings are grayed out, it's because you haven't run the little PowerShell commandlet. And you can see here, this will take you through to docs.microsoft.com. And in here, it explains, hey, you know, if you don't see that option, it tells you the requirements, what you need to do, and also how to configure it. So it will take you to the site and it will tell you exactly what you need to do. All right. So it's actually pretty simple, to be honest. So do you want to assign privacy and external user access settings? So for example, anything with this label, you might not want this being shared externally with guests, for example. External sharing and conditional access settings. So of course, conditional access adds a whole other additional level of security. So once you're authenticated, conditional access essentially says, okay, you might be authenticated, but are you authorized? And you need to meet certain conditions before you get access. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on both. So now it says, okay, what's the privacy for the user setting? So again, we had typically within 365 groups, of course, which are also teams, you can have a public group, a private group, and you can also have none. So I'm going to say this option will be applied basically anywhere. So I'm going to just say public anywhere. What about external user access with this label? Well, I'm thinking this is a sensitivity label, so I'm not going to allow group owners to send this outside the organization. Okay, define external sharing settings and device access. So do you want to control external settings from SharePoint, from within SharePoint sites? And do you want to use conditional access for SharePoint sites? And what this does, folks, is it essentially allows you to add an additional layer of security. All right. So remember, let's say you're in Microsoft Teams, well, the storage for Microsoft Teams is actually in SharePoint. So this is actually protecting your data really at source. So again, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to say, yeah, okay, I want to do that. So I can say who can share that content, or who can the content be shared with? Well, as it's confidential information, I'm going to say only people within my organization. And I'll say, do you want to use Azure Conditional Access? So again, you might say allow full access from desktop apps and the web, or do you want to allow only limited access? And this is for domain joined devices. So I'm going to go ahead and allow access for that because that's fine. All right. So I click on next. Now, do you want to, I mentioned we also have something called Purview, which is the new Azure database. So you can set up security labeling for columns within the database. Again, for this demo, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm just going to click on next. Okay, so we now get a review of our label, and I'm going to go ahead and create that label. All right, so this just takes a couple of minutes and off it goes and it creates the label and we're done. So now I'm going to click on done. So the label is created and we have now some options. You have a labeling policy and this is one I created earlier, and you can also enable auto labeling as well. Now, of course, because I switched on auto labeling, again, it doesn't necessarily create a policy, it just creates a label. So what we want to do is I'm going to go ahead, I can either create the label and then publish it to a policy, or I can create a policy and then add the label. So you can see here, if I go into, let's say, the Oslo policy, and if I click onto that label and edit that policy, you can see I've just assigned one label, that's the confidential. I could click on edit and I could now add in this additional label, right? Alternatively to this, I'm just going to click cancel. The other thing that you can do is, well, I actually prefer that method because if you don't do that, and you then say, okay, let's publish the label, it now creates a new policy. You understand? So what will happen is if you create new policies, you're just going to have hundreds of policies with single labels in them. You understand? Yeah. So what I'm going to do, well, unless of course this is going to be like an automated policy. So let me show you this. So first of all, I'm going to choose my users and groups here. And I'm going to say, do I want to set this up for individual users or some groups? So I've got a group called, of course, Oslo. And if I just click on Oslo, I'm going to add in my Oslo IT staff. So this label will be published to a policy for the Oslo IT staff. I'll click on Next. And then now it gives me some options. So if you had multiple labels in the policy, and it's a manual policy, and you've said, let's say, confidential, the user can select a lower classification label, but they have to give a reason for it, and that's logged. Require users to apply labels. So you could say, look, I need you to apply a label. Require users to apply labels to Power BI, Business Intelligence, or do you want to provide the users with a help page? You can do that if you want to. I'm going to click on Next, and this is the default label. So again, I've only got one label here, so I'm going to choose None, okay, because I want my users to be able to choose a label. Again, sites and groups. So do you want to apply this label to that specific group? Now, because this is an IT group, I'm actually going to assign the internal use label, okay? And I'm going to require my users to apply the label to their groups and sites. So anybody from the Oslo IT group, the groups that they create, it could be internal groups, it could be for financial reasons, they need to apply that label. So again, this is an optional choice. Okay. Power BI, I'm not using that at the moment, and now it asks me for my policy. So this is my Oslo policy, and you can put in a little description there, click on Next, and, oh, sorry. It already exists. Okay, I will call it my Oslo IT support policy. How's that? There we go. Oops, just spell check that. And there we go. Okay, so click on Next. I have now created my Oslo IT support policy. Click on Submit, and there we go. So this will only affect those users. And remember, because we've got conditions in here, it's looking for that sensitive information. All right. So now if users are using Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, whatever, and they're typing in letters or emails that contain the sensitive information, they will essentially get a warning that appears at the top of the screen, just warning them, saying, hey, you know, that looks like a credit card. You may not want to do that. Okay. And there we go. These are your policies. And you can see here that you can create multiple labels, and you can either publish the label to a new policy, or, as I said, I can go to that, let's say, go to the label policy here, and I can add in, so here is my Oslo policy. That's the first policy that I created. If I go into this policy and you edit an existing policy, I can then click on Edit and add in additional labels. Yes, there we go. So again, I can click on Next, just continue through because I'm not making any changes to the policy. And there we go, just update that policy. And there we go. So there you have it, Microsoft 365 information protection. Fantastic tool. And it's so important to protect data from leaking outside the company. And also the fact that you can automate stuff as well is really nice. Now, I hope you enjoyed the session. As always, if you did, give me a big thumbs up and please feel free to share the video. Now, and always, if you've got questions, comments, any kind of feedback, get them down below and I'll do my best to answer your questions. All right, so what can I say? Thanks so much for dropping by. I really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you next time. You take care, and thanks again. Cheers. Thanks for dropping by. Hope you enjoyed the video. Go ahead and click on the subscribe button and ring that bell and you won't miss a thing. See you next time.